So finally, they are kicking into action on the housing crisis. Yes, they've bolted. They're a hive of activity down there in the nation's capital. They are building 700 new homes. Yes, that was announced this week. It was a very furtive announcement, however, because the homes they're building, these 700 homes, are for American soldiers as part of the $8 billion renovation for the Sterling Naval Base for the US in Western Australia.
So well done, Labor. You bring a public housing bill into the chamber, you push it through the lower house, and do you know what public housing they're building?
What is it?
They're building public housing for US troops under Orcus. That's their public housing bill. Right now, they want to build 700 public housing units over in WA, not to put Australians who haven't got a home in it, not to put renters who can't afford a home in it, but they're building public housing for US troops because Uncle Donald asked them to.
It's an AUKUS housing deal. Who's paying for it? Well, Rex Patrick asked this week. Is it coming out of the AUKUS budget or is it coming out of the housing budget, the government's housing budget? We don't know because they're very secretive. But imagine how many homes $8 billion could buy for Australians as opposed to Americans. That's the AUKUS deal for you. The world's worst deal since they opened the gates of Troy for that wooden horse. But it was not all doom and gloom this week. Welcome to Scam of the Week. Let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good. First to the good, they pushed student debt relief through, that package for student debts to expensive university. They got that through this week. Well done. There's a lot of whinging about it, but, what about the tradies? But it's through and it's a good measure. Back in my day, it was free. Not that it did much good for me, but anyway, that's the way that it is. Friday came the news that Donald Trump kept Australian tariffs at the lowest in the world. 10%. Despite the wailing by the News Corp, where news goes today, media and Sky, those cantankerous people on Sky about terrible failure of Albo to meet with Donald personally. Personally, I reckon he just would have been humiliated by the orange oaf. But this announcement, this very good news on tariffs came through on the very day that the Daily Telegraph, Rupert's tabloid, was giving Albo a hiding for not meeting Donald again. Broken record stuff been going on for weeks. How was that for timing? There was also good news on the inflation front. Pity poor old RBA, late to the party as usual. Quarterly basis, it slipped below the band 2 to 3%, down to 1.9% for the month of June. A very good result, showing inflation is still trending down. Probably trending down too much now. Come on, RBA, awaken the giant within, as Tony Robbins would say. Now to the bad news from the good news, the Big Brother tactics on the rise, on the hill, as YouTube was now included in the censorship bill. That's the under 16 social media censorship bill. Now, this sparked, of course, fears of digital surveillance. I mean, what's next? Tracking of Google Maps? Will they know everywhere we're going? Do we have to sign on every time we get onto Google or Apple? Age verification? Because the kids will just steer right around that. It'll be the old codgers like me. Have to sign up the whole time. They'll be able to see where we are. It's all happening. It's all about controlling the narrative. Come on. I mean, the young'uns may be blocked from this very channel, the West Report on YouTube, from Scam of the Week, where we attempt to tell the truth, but they can still get smashed with gambling ads. They still, 3 years down the track, they still have done nothing about the inundation of gambling ads. And of course, the young people will still be able to watch Sky News, where they lobby for the Liberal Party and the Nats. They rant against wokeness daily and climate, science. They make excuses for the US-Israel genocide in Gaza and West Bank. You can watch the PR, apparently, according to our government, but just not the journalism. Imagine that, censoring YouTube. What a stupid thing to do. And the good news, further good news, is that after all this cheerleading for Israel and its the US genocide for almost 2 years, the media tide is finally turning. I think it's serious here. We're fairly impressed that they've finally started to produce more balanced, realistic coverage of what's going on over there. A bit. The politicians too. Stronger expressions of deeper concern, with furrowed brow by Penny and Albo, even by some in the coalition. The media running slightly better stories now that the starvation of children, women, men, shooting people at food distribution points, the US Gaza Humanitarian Foundation food distribution points, just these death camps. No recognition of Palestine yet by Australia, even as Canada and the UK this week joined France and Portugal and Malta in recognising Palestine. And we're still selling them weapons parts. More kerfuffle about that from the excellent David Shoebridge, holding the government to account on flogging weapons parts. Non-lethal weapons parts, says Penny. Non-lethal weapons parts. Just stop it. Stop selling genocidal regimes weapons parts. Simple. The other ugly, of course, was good old Chrissy Minns, the New South Wales Premier, fighting to stop peace protesters from marching across the Sydney Harbour Bridge today. The March for Humanity. What a double standard. 250,000 people marched against the Iraq War in 2003. They marched for reconciliation across the Harbour Bridge too. The bipartisan march, some libs in there with the Labor people. So the March for Humanity. It's okay also when a Hollywood studio shut down traffic for hours on the bridge to film some stunts for a movie called The Fall Guy, an action comedy. But a peace march, the March for Humanity. Oh no, we can't possibly allow that, said Chris Minns. A march to display solidarity with the poor people of Gaza. It seems that Chris has thrown in his lot with the zany Zionists, claiming it's a march for Hamas terrorists. Yawny yawn. Yawn. Haven't we heard enough? Seriously. Get into action. Police fear crowd crush was the line from the police when they took it to the Supreme Court of New South Wales this week and then went down Saturday morning. Police fear crowd crush. Oh, the fear. Just nonsense. Just captive to a genocidal regime. Anyway, after drowning public money and challenging the March for Humanity in court, the Supreme Court ruled the march can go ahead. We might even drag ourselves off the keyboard and stop being a digital warrior for a day and have a march ourselves. Chuck the keffir on. Why not? This thing's got to stop. Meanwhile, another scam unfolded in Vico, down south of the border, with police charging a 21-year-old with no apparent motive for the firebombing of the Adass Israel Synagogue. They spent 50,000 hours on that investigation to come up with a couple of young guys with no apparent motive. They were hired, again, by some mastermind. I wonder who that could possibly be, using encrypted messaging services to plot this scam. Foreign scam again, to raise the anti-Semitism level in Australia. $35 million they got, the synagogue, to rebuild as a government subsidy. It's a tidy little sum for what was claimed to have been an anti-Semitic terror act. But there's no sign that it was an anti-Semitic terror attack, just a scam. Scammed again. It's in double figures now, these scams. What look like petty criminals being instructed, probably small sums of money, by somebody and they don't know who it is, offshore. Who's behind it? Well, good old Chrissy Minns, was also inconvenienced a bit this week because AUSTRAC, the anti-money laundering counterterrorism financing regulator, announced that it was investigating the Mounties. That's the Mount Pritchard Pokies Palace. It's a big club out in Cabramatta, one of the biggest in the States, in fact, a pokey casino. The Mounties, they even bought the Harbord Diggers up the road here. 60 million, probably it's 500 million worth of land sitting on the headland between Kirkle and Harbord. Freshie. They bought that. Is that community? What are they doing for the Cabramatta community by expanding over to freshwater? Anyway, according to Troy Stoltz, who we spoke to this week, the Pokies whistleblower, another 130 clubs use the same compliance software that the Mounties did. So this is probably tip of the iceberg stuff. Thank goodness for that, because money laundering is clearly out of control in clubs. We're going to do a video on this very shortly. We're going to tell you how it actually happens, how this money laundering happens. It's pretty basic stuff. But back to the scams. Oh, good old Timmy Wilson, the lib, scraped back into office again. People are so happy about that. Tim was schooled by the Speaker, Milton Dick.
I ask leave the House to move Amendments 1 and 2 as circulated in my name together.
No such amendments have been circulated or exist, so we should continue. If you don't circulate, you've got to read the whole thing out.
Thank you.
No, what we're going to do...
Sure. Thank you, Speaker.
A few moments later.
I think what the member for Goldstein is trying to do is to move an amendment, which means he has to say at the start that he is moving it and then go through the provisions that he's moving. Yeah. Otherwise, once again, there will be nothing before the House.
If you follow this piece of paper, it says what to do. So, do one at a time.
Of course. I seek leave to move the following amendments.
I move.
I move.
On Politics 101. If you follow this piece of paper, Milton said to Tim in the lower house, in the House of Reps, it will tell you what to do. You think Tim would have that under control by now, having been there for years before he had his little voted out phase. This, while Tim's Conservative colleagues were busy for another week railing still about net zero. Oh, the climate wars, what is it now? 15, 20 years? Good old horse and buggy brigade. Funded by fossil fuels, the Nats and the Libs, and Labor too, but trying to do something. The transition is happening, whether you like it or not. It's not just science, it's the money. There's a deluge of money into renewables, and they need to accelerate that. It's going to happen, and when it happens, electricity bills will fall for everybody. Look at Mims, look at Glencore, Mount Isa, the big copper smelter up there. It's closed this week too. What's the scam there? Well, for many years the town was built around it, Mount Isa Mines, and now it's gone. Costs are too high. That'll cost jobs. Following our scoop elsewhere on the King's School, which they just call school, the oldest school in Australia. The headmaster, we revealed this week that he was found to have clipped a boy over the ear in a religious education class. Something you shouldn't be getting away with anymore in this day and age, clipping people over the ear. Anyway, the head looks as though he's toughing it out. We'll do something on this shortly, but the statement finally, after he wrote the story on Monday, says, much of the media reporting is inaccurate or misleading. Here it is. Many of you will be aware that an allegation has been made concerning interaction I had with a student during a lecture in Futter Hall at the end of term 2, said the statement from the headmaster, Tony George. He went on to say, the matter has received some media attention, although much of the media reporting is inaccurate or misleading. We were shaken to the core by this repudiation by Tony George. I mean, we're going to have to don the sackcloth and ashes over this and beat ourselves with leaves and tree branches if we've got something wrong. So we went back to the King's School and said, well, we really need to apologise, correct, clarify. What have we got wrong? What's this myriad of falsities that we're purported to have written? Well, we haven't heard yet, but you can be sure that we are going to scribe them in big detail, smitten. Elsewhere, CBA, the biggest bank in Australia, first cuts for AI. Now, AI is smashing us right at the moment. In fact, on this very channel, because of the deluge of people just repackaging AI stuff and chucking it across all channels, we've had our YouTube revenue cut in half in the past month or so. It is happening, AI, and it hit the banks this week, but the CBA said that it will be getting rid of a whole lot of jobs. This is serious stuff. I mean, this is going to affect almost every sector of the economy, even the lawyers. Heaven forbid the lawyers! Now, that came on top of the CBA being outed by ASIC this week for overcharging Centrelink customers, the most needy customers in Australia, overcharging them for their banking needs and refusing to pay it back, where the other banks, such as ANZ, did. They got caught and went, yeah, fair cop, we'll pay you back. Not so the CBA. So ASIC needs to put the foot on the throat here and demand recompense. The other banks in the cabal have paid it back, but not good old CBA and Bankwest. Victorian politics was consumed, of course, by the great statue debate, the statue of Dan Andrews, the former Premier, in bronze. I used to think more highly of Dan before he threw his weight behind the brutal regime of Israel, which is out of control. So personally, given his support for war crimes in Palestine, it would be good to see somebody sculpt a bronze keffiyeh into this statue. Jacinta Price was mortified, meanwhile. She copped a defamation suit from the Northern Territory Land Council, which she reckons may bankrupt her. And all sorts of other lesser scams, probably worthy of mention, worthy of telling, but there are so many scams. We could almost do a scam of the day, let alone a scam of the week. But the venerable achievement, the announcement of this week's Scam of the Week, goes to Chris Minns for trying to shut down peace protesters on the Harbour Bridge protesting for humanity. We can't be having any of that humanity stuff holding up the traffic. Come on down, Chris Minns. You have won Scam of the Week. Please like, share and comment in the section below and throw us a few bucks on Patreon if you can afford it.